Hey, how you doing? It's your boy Brogi Naric back again with another review. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Umbrella Academy Season 3, which recently dropped on Netflix. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan of this series. Been waiting, I think it's been, 3 years since Season 2 dropped. And love this series. It's based on a comic book which was created by the writer Gerard Way, who was the lead singer of My Chemical Romance, and artist Gabriel Ba. And it was created for television by Steve Blackman. This series has been on, this is, like I said, the third season. Fell in love with it since the first season. I still have not gotten around to reading the comic. This show's been out for like a good, 4 years? No, not 4 years. Has it been 5 years since it dropped? Maybe. It might have been 5 years since it dropped. No, it's been 4. It's been about 4 years since it dropped. And I still haven't gotten around to reading the book. I know I said this in my other previous reviews. I will read it eventually, but I have not gotten around to reading it. So this video is going to be a spoiler review. We're getting spoilers, so if you haven't watched the show yet, it's understandable because I've got to say, one of my biggest problems with the show is it's really good, but Netflix screws them over because this year is very packed. The summer is very packed with a lot of big shows, a lot of superhero-y, comic booky shows. So the Obi-Wan show was happening, it just finished. Miss Marvel was also overlapping with that. Then Umbrella Academy came out, and then the next week, Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 2 came out right after it. And then, of course, the week after that is Thor Ragnarok. And while all that's going on, I forgot to mention The Boys is also happening, and then that's going to be finishing up soon. So it's just a weird, conjunction. There's so much stuff going on, and then the Umbrella Academy just drops out with very little fanfare, which I don't know why Netflix keeps doing that with their bigger shows. They just don't promote them that well for some reason. It's frustrating as hell. That's my biggest annoyance with this show is this Netflix just dropped it out there, and it seems to be doing good, but it still dropped it out in a very crowded area. I don't know why they didn't wait till September. I don't know why they didn't wait till August, but they dropped it at this right before Stranger Things. I just thought that was weird, but it's understandable if you hadn't seen the show yet, because like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on. But it took me a minute to get through it. Well, I thought it was going to take me a minute to get through it, but as I started watching it, the show quickly reminded me why I love it so much. Where we have the dance-off between the Umbrellas and the Sparrows. So, quick synopsis: if you haven't seen season 2, basically this kooky group of superheroes who were raised by an abusive father, and they grew apart. They come back together to save the world because their sister Vanya was going to cause the world to be destroyed, and a way they solved that is one of the kids sent them back in time. Season 2, they ended up back in 1963, and a lot of timey-wimey bullshit happened. So then they fixed that, and they end up back in the present, but this time they end up in an alternate timeline where their lives didn't happen. So they run into a new group of heroes, the Sparrow Academy, and then they have to kind of deal with them, maybe team up, because now a new threat is happening called the Kugel Blitz, which is like this weird sort of reverse black hole that is now pulling in the entire universe and collapsing the timeline upon itself, and the families have to come together to save the day once again. And that's the essential synopsis. And of course, there's a lot of other craziness that happens, of course, with these characters and how they split off into different teams. And that's another thing I like about this season with these characters. We get new team-ups that we hadn't seen before. We get a lot more of Five and Lila, which was cool. And they have a connection because they both used to work for the Commission, the overarching group that was supposed to keep the timeline safe. So they got that history. We get to see Klaus and the father, a different take on the dad to a degree, and them getting close together. We get to see a little more of Luther and Vanya, which we did, or Victor, as he is now called this season, which we saw a little bit of that in season 2, but we get to see more of it. When we go through this review, I'm going to kind of go through what happened, but I'm also going to talk about mainly just break down the characters. So I'm going to start with the Sparrows, and we'll get them all in one group. And some of them I might talk about individually, like Sloan and Ben. But overall, the new Sparrows, I like them. They have cool powers, and I like their looks and all of that. You got Alfonso's like the blob guy that you hit him, and then that hit goes back to you type thing. That was cool. That's cool power. Jamie was okay, weird girl that shoots the hallucinogenic spit or whatever that makes you hallucinate. She was okay. They didn't really do that much in the show. Chris was fun, the weird cube. I wonder how the cube, like, was the cube a baby? Did it turn into a cube, or did a lady birth the cube? Like, what's that all about? Sloane was cool, Gravity Girl, like her. Faye was cool. I like Faye a lot. She's like blind, but she can like see through her pros that she can make and control and all that. That was very interesting. Marcus got done dirty. Marcus is basically Luther, but he's a black guy. Same powers essentially, same sort of temperament. He's just a bit more serious and less of a goof, and he was dead by the end of the first episode. That sucked ass. But I mean, if he was just gonna be Luther, might as well keep Luther. But I did love that scene where him and Vanya were talking, and Vanya was like, even though I'm number 7, I'm not to be trifled with, and I've destroyed the world twice, and I can take your team out if you guys keep playing with us. So basically, when the Umbrellas come back into this alternate timeline, they cause another rift in the timeline, which created the energy ball, the Kugelblitz, which is the reverse black hole. And not only did they create that, but they also, unbeknownst to them, caused a grandfather paradox. And I love in the show when they did the little thing, the little skit that showed us what the grandfather paradox was, which is basically, if you say you hate your grandfather and you go back in time to kill your grandfather because you hate your grandfather, but when you kill your grandfather before your grandfather met your grandmother, which then gives birth to one of your parents. So now, not only do you not exist, but none of your parent before you doesn't exist. But how does that happen? Because your parents need to exist in order for you to create the time machine to go back into the past in the first place, and that creates a weird paradox. And that's like the big thing that can really mess up the timeline. And unbeknownst to them, they inadvertently created a time paradox because we're reintroduced to Harlan, who was the little oddball kid that Vanya met back in Dallas in '63. And there was a moment where Vanya saved the kid and somehow passed some of her powers into him. And when they went back to the present, he's still alive. He had a similar ability to Vanya, aka Victor now, and I'll get more into that later. And when he was growing up, he couldn't control it, and his mom died of cancer. He got mad, and she died on the day that the other kids were born, which was October 1st, 1989. And he had this outburst, and he wrecked the hospital, but he was connected to them, and somehow his connection, his explosive power connected to the moms and killed all of the moms, because the spores came in and it infected the different women, and they gave birth spontaneously, but he killed them all before they can give birth, except for the 7 that were 8 that probably gave birth beforehand, which would be the sparrows. So by killing their parents, the Umbrella Academy do not exist in this timeline, thus creating the grandfather paradox. And also, thus again, Vanya is the problem, which has kind of been the theme throughout these seasons to a degree. Not as much in this season, but like still Vanya is the cause of the threat, because Vanya was going to destroy the world in the first season, inadvertently was going to destroy the world in the second season because her powers were then used by, an uncontrollable Harlan, which then caused trouble again. And again, uncontrollable Harlan to a degree has caused another problem. And I guess we can get into it now. And if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit the goal of 500. We could use your help, so please do so. Check out more content on the channel. All right, now let's get back into the video. I guess I can get into it now. So Vanya is played by Elliot Page, who used to be called Ellen Page years ago, and they recently transitioned, and they wrote that his transition into the show to a degree. Well, trying to be more of a, like, they didn't go full on, like, the whole operation aspect, but they did write that into the show. And I thought they handled it pretty well. Now, I'm not of that community, but, maybe you have other thoughts. But from what I saw, I thought they handled it as respectfully as they could have. The Victor character is a very good character. And I like this season. One of the things they did this season where it seemed like Victor was, this is like another, Victor was the outcast of the family. And I like now that this is like their third sort of big adventure, they're starting to get closer to Victor to a degree, except for the person that Victor was kind of getting close to, especially in the first season, a lot closer to, Allison. Their relationship takes a left. But I did like that Victor was getting closer to Luther, which we saw Luther and Vanya in the second season. I like that they were still getting close. I like Victor and Five a little bit. Like I like the stuff with Victor and Five. I like the stuff with Victor and Klaus to a degree, and because everybody gets split up all of that. But I thought the Victor character was good. I like that Victor was willing to protect Harlan once Harlan revealed to him that he was the one that accidentally killed their parents. And I like how Victor, it seemed like, was trying to be the leader of this team, but no one was willing to listen to them because they still remember, their childhood with Vanya, and they still don't take them that seriously. Even though they know that they're the most powerful person on the team, they still kind of don't take them that seriously. And I think Victor was playing it a little too laid back. Like, Victor wanted to lead, but wasn't willing to be as forceful. You got Luther, who's de facto leader. Allison was kind of running shit. That was the whole thing. Like, Allison was taking more of a leadership role. Diego wants to be the leader, but no one takes him seriously because he's kind of a goof. Klaus can't lead because no one follows him. Five, and that's the thing, Five was kind of the leader, but this season he was trying to fall back. Like, he was like, look, I'm cool. I just want to retire. I've been doing this. It's been like 28 days. I just want to retire. So I thought it was interesting, the dynamic of it. It seemed like Victor was trying to lead, but still wasn't quite ready to take that step. And maybe the next season, Victor might be the one to fully take that step and take the leadership role of this team, of this family. Robert Sheehan is one of the goats of this show, one of the main draws of the show, and he does not disappoint as Klaus. He does not disappoint, and I love his whole story with him and Sir Reginald, this new version of Sir Reginald, getting closer. And actually, well, he wants to know who his mom is. That whole bit when he finds out that the mom is dead. His mom was like this Amish lady, and he's the one who's really behind trying to figure out, what happened to their parents. And then he runs into Sir Reginald, and he sees that this is a different version of Sir Reginald. He's not as of an asshole as theirs was, at least in the beginning, because this version of Sir Reginald is a little more laid back because he's been taking these pills that's been drugging him and making him a little more docile. And they kind of make you feel a little sympathetic, like, not to trust this guy, but they do a good enough job to make it seem a little more sympathetic. Maybe it's a little more sinister, like, what's really going on with the Sparrows? And Sparrows are assholes, don't get me wrong. They are all assholes, douchebags, but like, when you find out the whole thing with Pogo, when Pogo got fired and he gave them the pills because he knew what Reginald really wanted to do, which was going to essentially lead to their death. He didn't want that to happen, so that's why they started drugging him. But then they also started being assholes to him, which after the end of this, I'm not mad at him. I was kind of like, man, what's going on with this? I thought it would be a little more sinister, but no, they were in the right to be assholes to Sir Reginald. Sir Reginald is getting off the drugs, like, because the drug guy, the drug addict is getting the guy off the drugs. And they start practicing, training so he can learn how to control his powers. All of that stuff is great, but they're playing in traffic. Hilarious, great stuff. Love all of that. And how Klaus is like Hargreaves' way to get back into the good graces of the family, which of course goes catastrophic, but it also works in the same play. That's a lot of things. There's a lot of things where people make very tough decisions, and surprisingly, it works out. At least to the end of the season, it works out. Now, next season, we don't know. Klaus getting control of his powers, him learning that he can die, but also heal himself and come back. Really, really good stuff. Because Klaus is technically like the second most powerful person on the team, but he's too much of a fuck up to really get a handle on his abilities. He's there now, and I do appreciate that growth of the character. He's a little bit less of a joke. He's still fun, but like he can be a little more serious now, and I do like that. We got Diego, who's one of my favorites in the show. He took a step back just a little bit, but his story was great, though. Him and Lila, I loved them in the previous season, and I like that Lila came back. So I wasn't sure if she was coming back, and I like her. I was a little frustrated with her character towards the end of the second season, but she came back better than ever in this one. So she pops up randomly and drops off this kid named Stan, and she's like, oh, this is our son. And it's like, well, he's 12, and with the whole time travel thing, he could be 12 and just be out of nowhere. So she's like, hey, this is our son. His name is Stan. He's 12. He's staying with you for a couple of days. I'm peacing out. And so then you have Diego trying to hang out with his son, Stan, and him trying to be cool, but try to be a dad and try not to sound like his dad, but be a dad. Like that shit was great. Stan was a fun character. Apparently, this kid was on Euphoria. I'd never seen Euphoria, but apparently he's like some crazy kid on Euphoria. He was a little badass kid on this show too. And of course, when it's revealed when he goes missing, Lila and Diego think that he's gone through that little secret passageway within the hotel, the Obsidian Hotel, which is where most of this show takes place because it's like this, monolith that's protecting them from the world crumbling around them. And they get attacked, and Lila's freaking out because she's like, "Look, he's not even your kid, but I need to find him." And Diego's like, "What the fuck? Like, you said he was our kid." Like, "No, he's not your kid. He's not my kid. He's a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine's son that is hanging with me." And he's like, "You kidnapped the kid?" Like that was a great reveal. And of course, they go through all of that, and then they find him on the other side, and then he dies. It's like, fuck, like that was the whole thing. So, Lila and Diego and their toxicity was great. The fact that she lied to him that, that was his kid, but she is pregnant, and she was hoping that by using Stan as like a test, she could see him not be a good father, so she could kind of be justified in not having him in her and the child's life, and she's not sure if she wants to have a kid and all of that stuff. Like, that was good. And I love that Diego initially wasn't immediately willing to be like, "Oh, even though you lied to me, I still want to be with you." Like, he did have that moment where he's like, "I don't know if I really want to be in a relationship with you because you just lied to me about this." So I like that Diego didn't completely fall for her, but they are insane and they're meant for each other. So it does work out, or seemingly is going to work out. But yeah, great stuff. And Lila hanging out with Five and them going on their mission. I thought that stuff was great because they do not like each other, but they start to get a little respect for each other. Fun stuff. Five seeing his older self. That was a great moment where he sees his older self, who was actually the one who created the commission. The whole time he's been hating on the commission. Turns out he was the guy that created it. And he tells him, don't save the world. And all we have left is oblivion. And I like how Five is like, "Look, my older self said don't save the world, and I'm not going to." And I think that's going to pay off more in the next season. Because even though he did inadvertently fall in line and kind of save the world, his older future self told him don't do it. And I think there's a reason for that. And I think we're going to see more of that in the next season. Now, Luther's my boy. I fuck with Luther. I like Luther a lot. He's the leader of he's the leader. I'm usually drawn to like the big tough leader, and he's also a fucking goofball. He's like the Cyclops, the Leonardo of the team, basically. And he's fun, and I love him this season. He finally gets some love. He falls in love with the other member of the Sparrow Academy, Sloan. And like off the rip, they got a crush. And I love when he got kidnapped by the Sparrows, and he was hanging out with them that whole day. And they think they can talk to him because he's the number one, but he's really not really in control. They don't really operate off that. Luther is usually the last one to know about the big plan. Like I said, Five is usually the one that's in charge of that type of stuff. So I like that. I like that him and Sloan found each other and they fell in love, and Luther's in love. I'm glad he's in a relationship that's not odd or toxic like what was going on with him and Allison, especially in the second season with the weird sort of love triangle, or at least unrequited love triangle, because Allison had moved on with her husband Ray. And I love that Luther could finally move on with someone that genuinely loved him, and they both loved each other. Because I was afraid that maybe Sloan was going to play him, and that's a possibility for the next season. I don't think that's the case, but I was happy they got together. I love all of the stuff with the moments with Luther and Victor where they're getting closer together. Like I said earlier, I enjoyed all of that stuff. I love the wedding episode. I think it was episode 8. They would have their wedding, and Luther's just trying to be happy. He wants everyone to be there except for Ben. He's like, fuck Ben and fuck Sir Reginald Hargreaves. I love that character so much, and I felt so bad for him when, surprisingly, when he got killed. I thought Sloan was going to die, but I think it's definitely more of an impact with him being the one to die. And I can get more into that with Sir Reginald Hargreaves. But him dying in the moment when he comes back, great stuff. And I'll touch on that again. Woo boy, Allison was wildin' this season. What's the actress' name? Emmy Raver Lampman. She did a phenomenal job this season. I gotta say, she went above and beyond. I loved her. I loved her throughout the show, and I thought she did really good in the second season. Her storyline in the second season was dope. With her being sent back to the 60s and being caught up in the civil rights movement and finding her husband. And even though she lost her daughter, she was still trying to move on, but also get back to her daughter. So now she's in a timeline where she ain't got her husband nor her daughter. and she's freaking the fuck out, and she is pissed, and she's upset that everyone's kind of trying to get back to the timeline, but she's the one who dead on wanting to get back. Like, Five is trying to chill out. Luther, he's in love. Klaus is doing whatever. Victor's, doing his thing with Harlan, and she's the only one who's like, look, I need to get back to my daughter. And she is like, she's drinking more. She's like, I'm gonna get back to my daughter, hella high water. She does not care. And like I said, the relationship with her and Vanya starts to deteriorate because Victor, like I said, is trying to leave, but then Allison's coming in and she's going a little more on the darker side, and she does not give a fuck who gets in her way. Victor takes responsibility over Harlan for, I guess, essentially cursing him, and they figure out a way for Victor to take back the powers. And that whole moment where he inadvertently tells Allison that, like, yeah, I'm so sorry for accidentally killing your parents, and she's pissed. Not only is she pissed because, dude killed their parents, which it, caused the grandfather paradox, but also because Victor lied to her and didn't tell her the truth, which was shady that Victor didn't tell them, but Victor also knew that they would jump to conclusions. So I and that's the thing about this, it's so nuanced because you understand everyone's decision to a degree. Now, there's some stuff that Allison does that's fucked up, but then there's some other things where it's like you understand why she reacts the way she does, why Five reacts the way he does when he finds out that Victor had lied to the family, the way everyone reacted. You can also understand why Victor was trying to protect her friend because because he knew that he had Harlan in a fucked up position, and also felt bad about what happened with her girlfriend, his girlfriend, Sissy, and all of that. Shit goes left. She kills Harlan, which at first I didn't know he was dead, but I was like, oh damn, she killed Harlan. She teams up with the Sparrows. The whole moment where they have that scene where they're uniting the teams, they're going to try to come together to form a plan to finally stop the Kugel Blitz, because the whole world and city is just crumbling around them. She's sick and tired of having to cover for Victor, because Victor, like, whenever she gets her life together, Victor is coming in and causing shit that fucks it up, and she's like, I'm tired of dealing with this. I try to be nice to you. Everyone's telling me to chill out. I'm not having it. I want my husband and I want my kids back, and they're going at it, and she got the power boost, so she doesn't have to say rumor. I heard a rumor. She can just mind control you straight up now, and she tells Victor to stop talking, and she's like choking and shit, and then she's like, I wish we would have left you in the basement. Like, I was like, yo, that shit is wild. So it gets worse from there. It just gets worse from there. She gets into it with Luther. She's clearly jealous of Luther, because Luther has moved on and he's having a happy life, and she lost her husband, and she's also jealous that Luther's not into her anymore, because they got that weird, season 1, there was that weird thing, like, we grew up together, we're not blood related, but we got a thing. And there was that whole episode where they were going to be together, and then shit got reversed, so that never really happened. But the feelings are still there. And then she moved on with her husband Ray. Now he's moving on with Sloane, and she like mind controls him to make out with her, and she essentially sexually assaults this guy. And he starts to have a seizure when he's trying to fight it, and then she releases him. Like, that was weird. Like, the way they kind of played past that was kind of crazy, but like, that was a wild moment. The moment where you see she uses the powers on herself to try to be like, I'm trying to be happy, like, crazy. Like, she was going through it. Sparrows are dead except for Sloane and Ben, and they go back to the hotel to hang out with everyone else. Then the dad and Klaus come back, so they're all together in the hotel. I love the whole bit where Sir Reginald thinks he can just come back in and tell them what to do, because they like, we do not fuck with you. Like, the majority of the team does not fuck with you, which is the Umbrellas, because like, the dad they grew up with was an asshole. And I like the bit where Sir Reginald realizes, like, the reason the other version of Sir Reginald treated them so poorly, because he thought that was the easier way to control them, by keeping them on their toes, keeping them confused about their powers. He thought it would be easier to control them. So now this newer take on Sir Reginald knows, like, okay, I can't play the game that way. And he's trying to play the game. And I like how he's relying on Klaus to kind of coach him to be a little bit nicer and a little more open to get closer to the kids. Eventually we find out that Allison made a deal with Sir Reginald to try to trick the team into going through the door, which there's this passageway inside the hotel that leads to another alternate reality. 7 people to go there to ring the 7 bells, which would then allow them to reset the universe to stop the black hole, the Kugelblitz, from destroying everything. And that's what Sir Reginald wants them to do. Five is very iffy about it because he's like, there's another layer to this you're not telling us. And the whole team is trying to debate on whether they should go. They leave it up for the vote. And the vote is 4 for it, 4 against it, and 5 is the tiebreaker. And he votes to not go because his older self told him to not save the world. So, you know, Sir Reginald's like, well, I kind of see like I fucked up at some point because you guys really do not like me, even though I'm not that version of the guy. So he kind of accepts defeat. We get the moment, which I mentioned earlier, where Luther talks to him and Sir Reginald fucking stabs him and slices him in the chest. He pulls a Nick Fury Avengers style, like where he's like, you know, we can bring the family together at a wedding. That didn't work, so we can bring them together at a funeral. And, you know, he's like the Phil Coulson, he's going to die, and that's going to get the team to come together to fight, you know, to avenge Luther. And he does this weird alien thing, and he's like got this blade and stabs him and slices his chest to make it seem like it's one of the guardians that are the beings they have to fight once they get to the other side that's protecting the seven bells, as he calls it. So, and I was like, damn, he fucked up Luke. Like, I was like, man, this dude ain't shit. So Sir Reginald, we find out that he mentions to Five that he's seen different worlds destroyed plenty of times before. So he's used to this. And you see the flashback where he discovered the portal where he builds the hotel around it, and he hires these mercenaries to go to the other side to try to do the same thing that he's trying to do, or at least to kill the Guardians, and that doesn't work. And this was back in 1880 or something like that. So it's been centuries since he's been trying to come up with different plans to cross over to Oblivion, activate the machine, so then he can reset time. And I think it's like over the centuries he had different plans, and I think the Umbrella Academy was like one of his final plans. He fucked it up in the original timeline. He got close with the Sparrows, Pogo stopped him, and now this is like his last ditch effort to get it together. So Luther's dead, everyone's freaking out. Conveniently, that's when the hotel starts to crumble, so everybody runs over to the other side to be safe, but he fucks over Klaus, that was messed up, where he's like, look, Klaus, I love you. I'm glad you helped me get back into the good graces of the family, but you're a bit of a handful, and I don't need you. So he just pushes him and leaves him to die, and Klaus sacrifices himself by jumping onto the bull head with the horns and stabs himself, so he dies. And then we see the scene where Klaus and Luther are hanging out in the afterlife, and Luther is freaking out, and he's trying to get Klaus to go back to, save the family, because, Dad killed him, and he's like, we got screwed over. Because Klaus, he really wants to kind of hang out in the afterlife, because, living in the real world is a little tough, but, like, Luther convinces him to go back and save the family. So, and we have all those great moments where they're fighting the Guardians, which I thought was interesting, that the Guardians were all, like, samurai, and the Oblivion Hotel had this sort of Japanese aesthetic. I thought that was very interesting. I guess they just chose that. I don't know if that's tied into the book, because I know from my research in the comic, the Hotel Oblivion is more like their version of Arkham Asylum that the dad created, and it's like in an alternate dimension, and it houses their enemies as opposed to being this passageway that could reset the universe. Differences here and there, and there's a Guardian in the book who's sort of like a Superman type guy, and then this one is like these superpowered samurai beings. They're not really robots, I don't know what they are, but Five ends up getting his arm cut off, just like the older version of him did, and he discovered that the sigil is there in the floor, it's the 7 stars. So after they got the one Guardian left, they all step on the stars, which activates the machine, except for Allison, because Sir Reginald tells her not to step on it. And this is important, because I realized as watching this again, Sir Reginald, even though he made a deal with Allison, he was going to still fuck her over, because he killed Luther and he killed Klaus. So it would have been 8 of them, but since Klaus came back, it was 9 of them. At that point, it would have been, if Klaus hadn't came back, Allison would have had to step on the stars, and Sir Reginald could have just activated the machine without honoring his deal with Allison. But because Klaus came back, he was willing to let her be saved from stepping on the device. So Reginald's a sneaky bitch. So we find out earlier that the reason Luther was on the moon was because Sir Reginald wanted Luther there as sort of a protection because his wife, Sir Reginald's wife that we saw in the first season, who was sick or whatever, he had her body in like cryogenic stasis on the moon, and the whole reason he wanted to reset time on Earth is because he wanted to bring his wife back, and this because this has been his whole goal this whole time was to bring her back because he said he's seen different worlds die, and he's from another planet. And I'm thinking he's traveled from different planets, and each planet has its own access to the obsidian. You reset the planet there, and I think this is just the latest planet. Earth is the latest planet he's been to, and he's trying to reset it again so he can then live on Earth with his wife. I don't think him and his wife ever lived on Earth together. They must have lived on that other planet, because we saw in season 1 where she was sick, and I forgot he unleashed the particles. So he has access to the particles, which then creates the kids with superpowers. And the machine runs on those particles, and it extracts the particles out of the kids, and it's also killing them. They're all hooked into the machine except for Allison, and he's fixing the thing to rework it. Allison realizes that this is killing her siblings, so she's trying to stop them with her powers. It's not working, and she grabs one of the weapons of the Guardians and slices it at him and cuts like a chunk of his head out. And she sees the green blood, and then he dies. She shuts it off, but the machine is still operational, and all she has to do is complete the equation or whatever. And maybe she messes with the equation a little bit. I don't know. Victor's telling her to stop, and he's gonna blow her away, but she's like, "Hey, just trust me." Victor trusts his sister. She completes the equation, even though everyone else is telling her not to do so. And then things go to black, and then we see Allison is back in California. As we saw earlier, where she was trying to see her daughter, and she didn't find her daughter because her husband, remarried someone else, and her daughter doesn't exist. But she goes back to her house, goes in, she sees her daughter, and her daughter is there. Her daughter Claire is there, and then the big change was that Ray is there. Now Ray is supposed to be in his 80s because he was back in the 60s, but he's regular Ray. He's back, and apparently they're a married couple in present day, which I thought was awesome. I fucking love Ray. Ray is a dope character. Allison did all this grimy shit and still got what she wanted, and I know that's going to bite her in the ass in the next season. And another thing I forgot to mention, which was a great moment, her and Diego was hanging out, and her and Diego was talking, and she mentioned, like, I don't think my other siblings is quite going to realize how fucked up going back to the 60s was for me. Because, her being a black person, being in Dallas, the whole civil rights movement going on. She couldn't use her powers to a degree because, she had the messed up throat and all that for a while. So she was in a vulnerable spot, and it being back in that environment forced her to be a little more proactive, which is one of the reasons why she had like more of a fire under her ass. Because she didn't want to be seeming defenseless anymore. And I love that moment. I'm glad they talked on that. And also, it was kind of crazy because it's like, yeah, when they went back to the 60s, the black person had to deal with racist cops, and the Hispanic dude got immediately locked into an asylum. That's kind of fucked up, but I like that they brought that up. The others arrive. They get out of this elevator. The hotel no longer is a hotel. It's a memorial park to Sir Reginald Hargreaves. Everyone's healed. Diego's got his fingers back. File's got his arm back. And friggin' Luther's back. He's back. He's no longer dead. And he's got his regular body. And everyone's like, yo, this is great. And he's like, yeah, I can't wait to show Sloan. And he's like, where's my wife? And they're like, well, she was with us in the machine. He starts freaking out, and he's getting all up on Five. He's like, yo, like, what the fuck's going on? Five's like, look, just let me go. But then he doesn't. So he's like, I'm getting out of here. And he tries to teleport. It's not working. They're all healed, but they don't have their powers. And they're like, what the fuck is going on? Luther's freaking out. He's like, I got to go find my wife. Klaus goes after him. Ben is still there. He's still being a dick. He leaves. Diego and Lila leaves, but she's still pregnant, so they leave, and then Five and Victor go their separate ways, and everyone just kind of walks away. They're like, hey, it is what it is. And we zoom out, and we see that most of the city, which I'm assuming is New York, I believe they're in New York, is now run by Sir Reginald Hargreaves Industries or whatever, and he's in this big building with him and his wife. His wife is back. He sees them, so he kind of sees. I'm guessing he still remembers what happened, even though he got sliced in the head. But it all essentially kind of worked out. And I don't know if it's like he's taken over the world or he just rules most of New York. I don't know that, but I think he just rules most of New York. But he's living the life, as they would say, and it ends like that. So it's pretty fucked up that Sir Reginald was willing to sacrifice his kids just to bring his wife back. I don't know if Sloane exists in this timeline because if they lost their powers, I don't know if and the things got reset. I don't know if Sir Reginald has released the particles again, and maybe he hasn't yet. If he did, maybe a new group of kids have powers. I don't know, but it's gonna be interesting to see. And then it ended with a weird scene with Ben. It is the new Ben. He's on the train back in Korea, just looking sinister. I don't know what that means. We'll find out next season. I can't really decipher what that means. Maybe he's tracking down his mom. Maybe he just wanted to go to Korea. I don't fucking know, but I gotta say, great show. I love it. These, like I said, these characters are great. I love the increased budget and the action that we got. The increased action. I love the suits of the sparrows. They look nice. And hopefully we'll get a newer sort of threat, because the whole timeline thing, we've done that 3 times in a row. Hopefully there's a newer threat, a newer adventure that they can go on, and hopefully we'll get a newer enemy too. We've done the commission, we've dealt with the dad. Maybe there's another extra villain. I don't know if we're going to get a 5th season. Hopefully we'll get a 4th. They haven't announced it yet, but I'm here for it. And hopefully when it's released, it's not released in this weird, awkward release date where it's surrounded by all this other stuff. But I feel like this show could get lost in the shuffle. Hopefully it won't, because it's such a good show, and I'm curious with this finale. I guess some people didn't like the finale. I'm curious because it's like, where do we go to next? That's what I'm excited about. Like, where do we go next? I want to see how they get out of this one. You know what I'm saying? So, those are my thoughts on Umbrella Academy season 3. Let me know what you thought about the series in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more videos. Peace.